Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Katie. I'm adding up Addingtons, and today I am talking about why we changed our daughters' names when we adopted them. So stick around. All right, if you are new around here, I'm a mom of 8. We are a large family. Obviously, we are former foster parents. We're an adoptive family. We own our own business. We homeschool. We love to travel. And we just talk about all of it here. So I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and stick around with us. All right, I'm sitting outside today. I got a couple of my kids with me, so you may hear them playing in the background. But it's pretty. These flowers are pretty. We're gonna roll with it. So today I am talking about why we chose to change our girls' names when we adopted them. I will start off with the caveat to say that a lot of experts and researchers and psychologists actually recommend that you don't change kids' names when you adopt them. Obviously, we chose to do so, and so I'm not an expert. Make your own choices, but I'm here to tell you why we decided to. If you haven't seen our family story and you just landed here today, when we started doing foster care, we already had 3 biological children with very distinctive names. I've done a full video on how we choose our kids' names, so if you haven't seen that one, check it out. The short version is that we pray about a meaning, and once we settle on a meaning, then we go and find a name that fits that meaning. So not only did we have 3 kiddos with very distinctive names, with very distinctive meanings, but by the time we got to adoption proceedings for the girls, not just foster care, but we were beginning the adoption process, I was actually expecting our 4th biological child, and we had already settled on a meaning for his name, and we're trying to choose a name. Another thing to keep in mind is that our girls were little. They were babies. They were 1 and 2.5 when we adopted them. Their biological families are not in the picture with us right now. It really just fell on us to make that decision. All right, so we started by asking for feedback from some other friends of ours who were adoptive families, and the people that we talked to had done a range of things with their kids. There were people who had completely changed all of their kids' names completely. There were people who hadn't changed any of their kids' names at all. And then we had friends who had done some combination thereof, had changed a middle name or had kept a middle name and changed a first name, or moved names around, every combination. We had friends who had done it. So we just talked to everybody to kind of get their take on what worked, what didn't, how did they feel about it after the fact, all of the things. And just overwhelmingly across the board, everybody said either we're glad we changed it or we wish we had. And one of the biggest deciding factors for us came down to some adult and teenage adoptees who basically said just change it all. The adoptees that we talked to had a combination. Some of them had their original names, some of them had changed them, and all of them said no, just change them. Having heard from other families that had changed or not changed their kids' names, and from adoptees who had changed or not changed their names, the message we were getting from outside was definitely to change names. And then, we really just felt like we had gone through such a specific process to choose the meaning of our kids' names, and they had such distinctive names that we didn't feel like we could have 2 sets as a family, that meaning and that process was very important to who our kids are and how we identify them every day, that we didn't feel that we could do that for some kids and not for others. So that's really what it came down to. So we ended up using the same process to name our girls that we did with the other kids. John and I prayed about it until we felt we had a clear meaning, and then we went out looking for names that fit that meaning, and those are their own stories. So in this video, I'm just going to explain why we did so. If you're still sticking with me, leave me a comment down below about what your name means, or if your kids' names mean something special to you. Or if it doesn't, what would you want your name to be associated with? So leave me a comment letting me know about the meaning of you or your family's names. So that is why we chose to change our younger daughter's names. So now, at this point in our story, we had 6 little kids who had distinctive names, who each had their own specific meaning and their own specific story of how we reached that meaning. And so when our oldest daughter came in and started asking, like, hey, where did all these weird names come from? And we were telling her the story and telling her why their names were the way they were and why we had changed the girls' names. After hearing these stories for a while, she came to us and said, will you choose an Addington name for me the same way? Now, she was 13 at the time. So she wasn't a baby. She did have some say in this. And her say was, I want you to choose a name for me. We used the same process to choose her name, even though she was significantly older. And it was very powerful to impart this identity of, I believe that who you are and what I am going to call you every day is chosen and cherished and worthy and beloved. For us, again, we are Christians, and there's actually a pretty big biblical precedent for names changing along with lives changing. A lot of times names in the Bible are used to represent promises from God or covenants with God, agreements between God and his people, starting with Abram, who God calls out, and when he makes him a promise, he says, I am going to use you, I'm going to make you a great nation, and I'm going to bless the whole world through you. He said, I'm going to change your name from Abram, which means exalted or honored father, to Abraham, which means the father of many. Now keep in mind, God made this promise and changed his name before his promised son was born. God tells him, I'm going to stake what I say about you on this promise that hasn't even happened yet, but I hold so much weight in this. I'm going to change who you are first, and then I'm going to make that promise come true. He does the same thing with Abraham's wife, Sarai, which means my princess, changes her name to Sarah, which just means princess, showing that her identity is no longer just within her family, but to the whole world. He says, because I'm going to make you a mother of many. Even their son Isaac means son of laughter, because Sarah laughed when she heard God's promise and didn't believe it was true. Jacob means supplanter, or one who comes after, because he was born holding his twin brother's heel. But as an adult, God gives him the name Israel because he wrestles with God. And that is a name that continues to define Jacob's descendants to this day as a people throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament and into modern history that wrestle back and forth with God, that run to God and then rebel against him, and just this back and forth of wrestling with who they are and how they interact with God. That is a major name change that continues to define people to this day. Even in the New Testament, we see this. Jesus takes the confession of his disciple Simon and says, I am changing your name to Peter, which means rock, because I'm going to build my church on what you just said. He changes his identity to the cornerstone of the church, changes his very identity to match the calling on his life. So we see that there's a huge precedence in names having meaning and heritage, and people's names changing when their lives change or they receive new promises and new relationships and new covenant. We wanted to convey that there is a promise, that there is a covenant, that there is a calling and identity, both from God to our children and also from us to our children. We are committing to you. We love you. We see these things in you, and we are praying these things into your life as your parents. So those are things that we wanted to impart to all of our children, both biological and adopted. So that is why we changed our kids' names. At this point, they have all become very natural to us. In fact, it's very jarring to me to hear their birth names because their new names fit them so well. Now, I will say, we don't hide their birth names from them. They're not secret. The kids all know what their names were. The other kids all know what their sisters' names were. They're not secret. We're not ashamed of them. We don't hide them. We don't treat their birth names like they're bad. We just say that they have new Addington names that describe who we believe God says they are and the truth that we believe about them. So we believe that God has and will continue to heal and protect. We believe that God has and will continue to delight in being gracious. And we believe that they are chosen, cherished, worthy, and beloved, both by God and by us. And I think that's an important thing. So, thanks for sticking around with me. That is why we chose to change our children's names. Not to say you should or shouldn't one way or another, simply offering our perspective and the factors that went into making that choice for us. So thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below what your name means or why you chose your children's names. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.